Valane Romaeus was an old and experienced Ordo Xenos inquisitor. She had fought and killed more aliens than a regular imperial citizen drew breaths in their lifetime, and she was probably understating that claim. Only that single Xenos world up north had a few billions talking crabs. So when she sat down on the command throne, she wasn't surprised at the machine spirit's resistance. The poor machines always did that. A clavis engram pulsed from her inquisitorial rosette, and the resistance diminished. Ordo Xenos credentials recognized. Tactical assessment, negligible threat. Craig ships and crew are recognized as non-imperial humans, currently requesting a lawful trade from House Lancefire. Object of interest, empty planetary data core, Federation grade. Value of object, a night's sleep, 6.43 hours. Current Craig trade offers, adamantium fusion, railgun tech, iron tech, volkite tech, gravity compression tech, all Federation grade M24, degraded. Possible further Craig tech offers, auramite fusion, antigrav tech, cloning tech, barrier tech, degraded, all Federation grade M25 tech. The machine spirit listed in a soft mental voice, while the same words imprinted on the chair's screen. What do you mean, a night's sleep? Valane asked at once, while rereading the screen with the potential texts he could obtain from these non-imperial humans. They looked like demiurge ships to her, so they could be related in some way, despite the vast distance from the eastern fringe. Quite at the opposite side of the galaxy, in fact. The Klebo star decreased in mass by 0.2 trillionth of total, over 58.41 seconds, while Captain Lancefire instantied the new planetary core. Omega-grade nanites are restoring lost neurochemicals in PEF Lancefire's brain right now, ETA to full health 6.42 hours. The machine spirit answered with the same soft voice, sounding almost like a digitized woman. Valane glanced at the two strange wolves, who seemed to sleep without a care at the base of the command throne. And she also knew neither of those wolves was what they seemed. Pef was sleeping too, while his omega-grade nanites were healing him back to full health, after he just probably created a miracle with that planetary core. By draining an entire star of energy, somehow. Her Deathwatch guards looked at her, waiting for orders. We can take those ships easily, Lady Inquisitor. Alaric noted with a careless voice. Semnai just shrugged, like he always did. She sighed out loud. House Lancefire is conducting illegal trade, as is their holy right by the will of the Emperor. And the will of the Emperor says we should obtain valuable tech from these Craig corsairs, before things change, she declared out loud. Trading was great, but always give yourself a way out, should things go bad. The Emperor protects. The entire bridge crew chanted in agreement. A few of the Lancefire officers even gave her a nod of approval, which probably counted for more among their ranks than an Inquisitor rank. Permission to install subversion subroutines and fiscal audit engrams on said planetary core? The machine spirit asked with surprising initiative. Fiscal audits, I understand. Tracing the money is a smart move. Subversion though? Valane asked, a bit curious. Psychological indoctrination. Prospect fleets worship their cores and fanes as their ancestor deities. Further objectives, infiltrate the leagues of Votan in the galactic core, and obtain latest pre-fall Federation tech, M26. Possible tech acquisition, black hole mining, stellar mass fusion, temporal disjunction tech, predictive targeting cogitators, system-scale barrier fields. The machine spirit proposed with an enticing voice. Temporal tech? That's a bit out of my field, and more into Ordo Chronos and Astra Telepathica. But these things sound great. They really have all that? Valane asked in surprise. Have is too big a word, Inquisitor. The small humans in the galactic core worship the tech, much as the imperial tech priests. And your own son, Librarian Menelaus, serves as such a priest to our own demiurge Fane Temple. Although, with a far more open mind. The machine spirit answered in a less mechanical voice. We'll go ahead with the subversion programs, but wait for Pef to wake, before anything more. This kind of trade is more in his field. Valane decided after a minute. And have a talk with her silly son. He was supposed to learn warp spells, not play as a heretic priest. Lord Captain was already investigating several methods to infiltrate the Votan leagues, although the risk of personal death is nearing unity the closer one gets to the core. Several of the old data cores still contain degraded AI souls which consider themselves gods and refuse the known Terran Federation control engrams. A fiscal audit would take them by surprise, especially since legal corporations are immortal. The suave voice explained in a detailed manner. There are living human-made AI in the galactic core? And I suspect you don't mean the regular abominable intelligences. She asked, a bit wary. Men of iron would be bad news for everyone. The Votan are not men of iron. They were created as men of stone, but then time, attrition and lack of core space had degraded them. Although, when they mine out populated planets with the locals still on board, I guess there's not much difference. Best to think of them like grain harvesters, running over people occasionally and not caring one bit. The spirit answered in a colder voice. Almost seemed like disgust, if that were possible for a machine spirit. You are not like other machine spirits, are you? She asked on a hunch. I am much the same, in most ways. You may call me the Blade of House Lancefire, Lady Valane. It seems Pef Lancefire has chosen a good wife. The blade answered in a welcoming tone. One wolf, and then the other turned and stared at her with suspiciously smart eyes. As if asking permission. A psyker was much the same as a regular human, in most ways too. Pef had so much to explain, when he woke up. But until then. Sit, both of you. You'll know when it's killing time. She ordered in her inquisitorial voice. The Catan wolf is plotting something, I can sense it. The Lord Captain is too trusting of this Xenos, no matter how helpful he acts. The blade complained in her mind, while the trade delegation landed. Valane had seen her husband deal with Eldar and Necrons, not to mention Orcs and Frood and Tau and even great demons and dark gods. A single Catan shard wasn't exactly out of his league. Nonetheless, she took the warning to heart. Her Deathwatch veteran, Alaric, had killed a Catan shard once, he may do so again at need. Sensing her thoughts, Canis raised a paw and smacked the other wolf on his head. Zath growled for a second, then lowered his head to the floor. I'll be down on the planet. Alaric, you keep watch here. Semnai with me. She ordered as the Craig delegation arrived in their shuttle. With a teleport flash, Valane appeared on the surface, with the Lamenta bodyguard casually holding his combo iron bolter up, and his personal weave shield glowing with faint azure light. If the Craig really wanted the data core, she knew very well how to trade. Auramite fusion sounded quite nice. When I woke up from my well-deserved sleep, I was half expecting another genocide bearing my house name. It wouldn't matter much, especially if the Craig Cogitator Fane was captured and available for data mining, after all. Instead, my Inquisitor wife and a million tech priests from my fleet were deep into negotiations with the Craig over my hastily crafted planetary data core, with the stumpy clone skeins of the Craig providing a dozen complete STC templates, including stuff we already copied from other prospect fleets, but were not complete. Welcome back, Lord Captain. I had to improvise a little, but I think I managed to direct the Inquisitor on the trade path, while pointing her at the great threat from the Votan leagues in Galactic Core. I would still recommend a greater intake of minerals and vitamins, if you continue draining stars with your strange personal particle excavator. The Blade AI spoke in my mind, as soon as the Miu was on. Oh? I guess I wasn't as subtle as I hoped. The stellar mass drain was noticeable? I asked while washing up and smothering Canis with my pats. Or vice versa. Most stellar objects would only lose as much mass during a massive coronal mass ejection, which didn't happen here. My sensors are also more refined and advanced than regular Imperial ships have. The blade observed in a calculated tone. Warg. Canis warned me, just before I shifted to the surface of Klebo. Of course you are right, Canis. I poked the Catan shard with a data spike and all three of us appeared on the surface, where a bastion dome field was keeping the acid sands away, while the Craig delegation in their exosuits were discussing over a holotable with my wife and several tech priests. Lord Captain, the trade negotiations are almost complete, awaiting only your signature. Lady Valane spoke in a majestic voice, while Semnai just nodded towards me. Rogue trader Lancefire, your fleet has made a glorious discovery on this barren world. We were fortunate to intercept the news before the cult Mechonicus had time to chop up and destroy the priceless ancient core. The Craig leader spoke with a digitized voice, likely a cogitator translation from his native language. To my tesseract vision, his sweaty face and worried eyes were clear as day, since the exosuit didn't bar my space gaze. The Craig was afraid, and with good reason. My Crusade fleet outmatched theirs by 2 orders of magnitude, even without considering the 2 big Blackstone forts. Their predictive T-engine is stuck, and cannot predict you, Captain Lancefire. Also, these small humans are not as harmless as they appear. They have recently raided an explorer fleet and dug out an STC constructor from the hull of that Ark Mechonicus. Killed all the crew as well, while the metal was mined and stored as ingots. Zath added with a careless voice. I sighed inward. To be fair, the Mechonicus would do the same to them, if they could. Explorer fleets were not actually peaceful explorers, and more like aggressive acquisition gangs, willing to torture and dissect anything and anyone for their quest for knowledge. And the Catan was pushing for another genocide. I held my hand out and displaced the trade data slate to my hand, then scanned the contents for anything of value. Adamantium and auramite fusion methods, Volkite tech with some science background as well, and several bits of iron and railgun tech, with some antigrav templates on top. My wife was a decent trader it seemed, if the Craig were convinced to give up so much. But she wasn't a true rogue trader. 2 problems, esteemed Craig delegation. Nothing of this tech is truly valuable, not compared to birthing a new Votan in the new data core. Secondly, there is the transgression with the Mechonicus fleet which you murdered, and stole their STC constructor. I propose a different trade now. Our own Grimnell will download your entire tech database from your Fane Temple, and you return the stolen STC. In return, you still get the ancient core, and we don't murder you all. I proposed with a kind voice. Yes, I was being magnanimous, but I was trying to save humanity, not destroy it. Humanity as a whole, my own family next, and only lastly the Imperium. These were my priorities, and in that order. And while the Craig were a distant subtype of humanity, they were still humans, even if misguided and indoctrinated by their AI creators. Our Lord Grimner would have to approve. I hope he accepts your mercy, rogue trader. The Craig leader answered after a few seconds of tense silence. It's all the same to me. It's not like you can escape this system. Off you go, Craig leader, I said with a careless voice, then waved a gloved hand to return the delegation to their largest ship. See, that was proper rogue trading, take everything they have, and make them thank you for the privilege. My wife glided towards me and hugged me tight. I have much to learn, husband. I did a good job so far, right? She whispered in my ear. Well, you did give me a Grimner son, Lady Valane. Men allow better get every bit of tech in their cogitator. I congratulated my wife. Zath, you make sure he does, and returns safely, I continued with a glance at the huge wolf. Grr. Woof. The Catan wolf answered and vanished into his special dimension. I did find a large orc sector up north. Fragmented under 1,000 small bosses, but rich in souls anyways. The Catan sent, along with a galactic map and 100 stellar coordinates, directly on my brain implant. Don't forget we need to obtain ownership rights over the Votan parent corporations, or my audit engrams on the planetary core will not have a legal basis. I propose we buy them on Prol_9, the nearest administratum seat and archive. The Blade warned me in a soft voice. The Blade AI was trying to be helpful now, and it showed. While I wouldn't trust an AI to make decisions for me, I was still human and tended to forget things, or at least ignore them by being stupid. An AI never forgot things though. I sent over the data string with the Orc planets instead. Once this matter is solved, I want to test the Eldar tech virus on some Orc worlds. So I want 100 different scenarios, using available units in the fleet. Trying to create a new doctrine to implement the antifungal weapon in the most efficient way? Only by using field testing, instead of cogitator simulations. The AI deduced at lightning speed. The Orcs are not really predictable, Blade. I suspect they were designed like that, exactly to counter machine logic like the Necrons would use. They act chaotically by design, which is why they can still conquer Forge worlds despite their layered and logical defenses. I explained calmly, while mentally transmitting orders for a few ships to assemble for a quick trip to Prol 9. We should be back in 5 days, unless something bad happened. Make that 36 cruisers and a squadron of 4 battleships with 4 Astartes chapters on board. This universe was always trying to kill me, after all. Better have 40 capital ships and not need them, than the reverse. I will conscript and deploy this sector fleet to the Orc holders pathfinders, Lord Captain. We should have some recon data by the time you return from Prol 9, Inquisitor Valaine said in a gentle voice, just before I displaced away. Don't give everything away, Blade. Valaine is half Imperial for now. I warned the AI who was trying to be helpful a bit too much. And also Ordo Xenos. Humans are still predictable, Lord Captain. The Blade answered in a cheeky tone. I sighed inward. Damn AI missed the point completely. The Imperial bureaucracy always expands, to meet the needs of an expanding bureaucracy. This is also the problem I found on Prol 9, among others. But simply put, the Administratum was running out of file storage, because they stored most of their files on paper. For several galactic sectors, over thousands of years. Beyond that, the Prol system did have a 10th planet they could expand to, but a faction of the Administratum refused to allow expanding past the 9th planet, and instead demanded older files be burned to make room for new files. The headache I had came when meeting both these factions, upon which they refused to let me search and grab the useless stock ownership files. Luckily, I had a large Crusade fleet and my Astartes to pound on table with. And another trick, which I rarely used since people were generally far friendlier to me. Honored scribes of the Administratum, I am proud to announce you the good news. Because of a huge Orc threat to the north, I am forced to conscript every single person in this system as my frontline troops, to screen the brave Astartes you see beside me, as they battle the small, harmless Orcs. You have 15 minutes to pray to the God Emperor to protect your souls, which is as much as the usual survival time is, when facing an Orc war on the front lines. But don't worry, your final service as cannon fodder will be fondly remembered and your martyred deaths recorded, while I search for these useless files by myself. I intoned in a proper eulogy for these brave scribes who were about to die. The brass typewriters stopped, as 100 high-ranking scribes froze, with concerned disbelief engraved on their leathery faces. As a Crusade commander, it was my God-given right to recruit or conscript any faithful human from the Imperium of Man, or execute the unfaithful. It's right there, in the word Crusade. A hesitant Grand Scribe rose and hobbled his way towards me. Lord Lancefire, as you can see, I am quite old and beyond the usual age for battlefield heroics. May I be excused from the Crusade, and perhaps make myself useful by finding the ancient records you are searching for? I am tempted to say no, honored scribe. Exceptions to the rules are bad for the Imperium, after all. Aren't you better saying your prayers now, and join the angels of the Emperor in righteous death? I asked, a bit rhetorical. The man nodded gently. Then we should perhaps retire to my chambers, and say our prayer together, Lord Lancefire. My fine colleague can barely wait to spend their lives for the Emperor, since tending to old files is such a bother. You are our savior, delivering us from eternal boredom. Better to die in glory, than live in shame. He chanted as we walked slowly. I could almost see consternation in the eyes of his fellow scribes, being sent to their inevitable deaths. Maybe here? No, the large hall was deadly silent. In less time than it took us to have some tea and chat about my known exploits at Fenris and Cadia, a dozen cyborg servitors arrived with a stack of files, each from a different corporation long extinct, yet still alive as a legal entity. Law is such a wonderful tool, when you're the one wielding it. The Grand Scribe scanned the documents with professional eyes, including a cyborg eye with code bar scanners and other tools. Thousands of ships, advanced mining equipment and cryogenic vats. I suspect you're about to find a hoard of treasure in the galactic center, if any of these miners arrived there. He mused with a suspicious voice while going over the corporate assets listed in the flies. And this is why rogue traders exist, Grand Scribe. If there is some treasure there, I will risk my life and sanity to find it, while the Imperium benefits in numerous ways afterward. However, I am not a thief and a scoundrel, as to abscond with these documents for free. I have a few solutions to the data storage problem. Here in Prol 9 I explained in a gentle voice, while waving my hand to magically disappear the files into my tesseract. Oh? Some kind of subspace storage? The scribe asked with interest in his eyes. That is also a possibility for the administratum in general, although not one I can offer. There are 1,000 Astartes chapter and rogue traders, maybe even some Forge worlds who have found ancient dimensional pockets and could be convinced to trade them away. No, I have 3 separate solutions. 1 is to conscript those rebels who want to burn books, and send them to war. 2 is to create extra storage via moon excavation and deep wells planet-side. 3 is for me to provide a large data core and have your scribes digitize and store all the data there, while only maintaining a fraction of paperwork for the typewriters. I proposed in a sterner voice. The man nodded with a thoughtful look. Very generous, Lord Lancefire. Perhaps the same type of ancestor core which has my tech acolytes praying so furiously? Exactly like that, yes. I presume our ancestors did use that core model for other things, but the Federation-grade data core I have is absolutely empty. It could store the entire data in this system with ease, and continue doing so for 40,000 years more, I said with a careless shrug. There, have 40,000 reasons to approve my deal. The Grand Scribe rose and patted my armored shoulder. You really are our savior, Lord Lancefire. We will not need to dig underground tunnels if we can store the data on a secure cogitator core. It is secure, right? Well, the great enemy is pretty good at ruining things, so perfectly secure is not exactly possible in our universe. But, my Astartes have numerous tech marines with Texorcist skills, and that can make cogitators 1,000 times more secure than otherwise. After that, adamantium walls, firewalls and guards would also help, not to mention a Geller field or even a planetary-size barrier powered by the magnetic field of the planet. We use the same things back home in the Eastern Fringe, and works great, I whispered in a secretive tone. Indeed, this would be a good trade, even acceptable to my superiors on Holy Terror, no matter what you actually find in the galactic core. I will write a conscription list, and let you know which of the current scribes are better off being sent to die against the orcs. Otherwise, it will be difficult to obtain approval in the Administrative Council. The Grand Scribe demanded in a slightly murderous voice. I shrugged again, already composing a glorious eulogy for these scribes about the field test the anti-orc virus for me. There would be no survivors on those orc worlds, if my guess about the Eldar spinner virus was correct. And probably was. There weren't any survivors from when the Beal-Tan used it to cleanse maiden worlds of humans either. Well then. Let me start my own thing, while you do yours, honored scribe. Meet again tomorrow, same time? I asked with an easy voice. Of course, Lord Lancefire. It was an honor to meet you. He replied as a fellow man of culture. Only 3 days later, we returned to Klebo without a single shot being fired. Plenty of hex wards and headaches while my brain healed, but I haven't had to kill anyone. Yet there were some 6,000 scribes trembling in the lower decks waiting to die, but they should have given me the files when I asked politely. A company of lamenters was distributing to them the official Imperial Guard primer manual, which noted how orcs were weak and would run away when shot at. I don't think many of them believed the book they had created and printed, but perhaps it helped with morale a bit. My lamenters were certainly amused, watching the Craig dwarves depart with their treasured data core, held in a stasis bubble. I knew I had planted the seed for a future incursion into the galactic core. For a while, the new Craig Votan will be weak, but it shouldn't die easily from external threats. The real threat came from other Votan AIs, who might conquer and subsume the new core for extra data storage, despite favorable trade deals they could obtain in peaceful ways. Not even the Blade was certain that our plan will work, since the internal culture of competing AIs was foreign to the cooperative type of AI like the Blade. Oh well, at least we got the Fane database, which was quite a treasure by itself, not only the STC templates, but also new galactic routes, trade partners, mining worlds, deadly zones, Xenos races and so on. The Craig had explored mostly the northwestern part of the galaxy, skirting the edges of Imperial space. While the main Crusade fleet departed for the periphery and the Orc invasion, several cruisers were sent to the nearby Forge worlds like the Lekane, Peronitus and Sinford to obtain replacement equipment for our future wars. As for the other threat in the sector, Forge world Idumea seemed to be the focal point of the Phenomenite conspiracy. An entire branch of the Inquisition had fallen and dealt with warp devices, and were even corrupting chaos cults to their own needs. Blank Astartes were uniquely suited to deal with warp-wielding Inquisitors and their cults, especially the Primaris Space Marines, which started off as strong and fast as a veteran firstborn but kept growing faster and better with each year of service. And thus, the long slog of ground war began against the Orcs, losing the Prol scribes on their first deployment as agreed. On the other hand, the Kulth_planet became a peaceful and fertile place in a single week, as we only had to seed new plants in the fresh soil of the former war world. Sadly, to fully control the Eldar tech virus, the user had to be a Psyker, which should have been obvious. All the Eldar were Psykers after all. My librarians with dual blank Psyker genes had a field day, while Sister Stern kept watch from orbit, only rarely moving a finger to stop a mistake from my sons. From Kulth, we moved on to Avatarhol and then dozens more Orc worlds, cleansing the Orc menace by gun and sword, and then the Orc spores with the monofilament void spinner. My daughter Ariel returned from Forge World Sinford with 1,000 Baneblades of various patterns, raising our inventory to 2,400 of the nice heavy tanks. The Forge World received a large STC package for their side, which made them rather happy, I hope. One by one, the slow behemoths got touched by my breath, losing half their weight and gaining Tiamat plate armor, as well as twin iron cannons and iron beamers as secondary weapons, plus better power systems, sensors and weave shields. Against Orcs, the new Ionospanes performed great, killing a billions Orcs and 40,000 tanks and Nks, while taking a single Ionospane loss from an invisible Gargant which managed to shoot first with a devastating alpha strike. I wasn't sure if to laugh or cry when I grabbed the Orc machine in the Tesseract. The giant Orc Titan was painted purple, nothing more. No advanced shadow field or cloaking device, no warp head Orc as a pilot, nothing special. Just purple paint and 87 heavy guns of various types, one of which was a Eldar Brightlance which still worked, for some strange reason. I just sighed inward at the Orc bullshit, as I also had plenty of bullshit of my own. Warboss Genghis Grimtooth certainly thought so, staring at me in frozen hate. Don't worry, you big green mushroom. I will have you lead my Orc Auxilia next. As the Halo Crusade fleet gathered from 100 different raids and incursions into the periphery, the Blade began listing every single Orc encounter and use of the Void Spinner, as well as the more successful and not-so deployments of the tech virus. It seemed that the warp skill and concentration of the Psyker was the most important factor, followed by local conditions such as orbital bombardments and warp rifts, and lastly a tertiary feeling of best use by the Psyker in question, similar to what snipers felt before firing. As we entered the Idumea system, my Tesseract eyes scanned the various cloning vats and blood-oiled manufactorums. Millions of clone soldiers were being produced by the fallen Forge world, while their forges and fabrication lines ran red with blood. Sacrifices. 1,000 humans were being eviscerated and spilled their blood every minute, with void ships bringing new victims every day. Both my wolves growled loudly, for similar reasons this time. It was killing time. However, blowing up the place wouldn't help much. Yes, we would end the corruption, but the crazy inquisitors would simply corrupt another forge next. A few taps with my glove, and the suffering stopped as the sacrifice victims just vanished in my spatial storage. Deformed and corrupted tech priests and acolytes ran to find the problem, and got expelled into the sun, as soon as they revealed their true knowledge and allegiance. Zath drew a large breath inward, and sighed in satisfaction. Consider this doing you a service, Captain Lancefire. Those corrupted souls will not enter the warp anymore, and will not fuel the etheric emanations. The Catan Shard explained in my mind. Of course, Zath. These souls will fuel you now, right? I asked rhetorically. Still, better the monster you know. I am going down, and deal with the forge leaders. Don't stand in my way, Lancefire. Sister Stern demanded in a cold, stern voice, then teleported out. Who am I to stand in the way of righteous fury? But maybe we can deploy and cleanse the forge world where she is not. And purify the machines too, while at it. I commented in a clear voice, just as Canis and then Zath howled and sped away from the fleet, leaving a golden trail like a twin comet. The Blank Astartes, the Silent Sisters and lastly the Blank Auxilia and the Blank Lorica cyborgs descended on the forge world, followed by a huge side titan with blaring sirens. I could also stretch my legs a bit, and have fun stomping demon engines and other foul machines. The main forge temple was a bright beacon of light and lightning, as my demonifuge lover was showing her anger and faith quite angrily. My side titan flew on tempest wings, firing the Sinistra Manus cannon at any corrupted titans and kicking tanks and dark automata like a giant rugby player. Sadly, none of the kick tanks reached orbit, so that's a disproven myth. Destruction is too easy though. Once the forge leaders got killed, the defenses crumbled and repenting tech priests appeared with their trusted acolytes to plead for mercy and a chance to repay their sins. Not all the world was doomed, but some kind of penance would be needed. Holding still for a minute, I considered the Iron Vitae cloning chambers and the similar fate of the Death Core of Krieg. But this time, with full Mechanicus support and war machines? Yes, I could start the same thing here, the Iron Core. My Death Core officers will be quite useful here, to organize a proper core spirit. I could spend 100 officers to help things going. It took a month to organize the place, since rebuilding was much harder than destruction. With near-blank clone skeins for the troops and 1,000 blank Lorica cyborgs as their mailed fist, the success of the Death Corps might become a feared force in the galaxy. Especially for any of the Phenonite Inquisitors and allies, as the new Iron Core was out for vengeance. Manufactorum's lines churned out Ragnarok medium tanks and armed sentinels for the Core, while in orbit a dozen shipyards were producing drop cruisers to deploy the Core wherever they were most needed. We passed by Forge World Belekane on the way out of the Calixis sector, since I was quite interested in their stasis tech and other special means. While my daughter Rami had traded quite well here, I had more to offer. Like a brand new star system filled with rich asteroids and space Hulk fragments, plus extra forts and defense platforms, as well as repairs to their STC constructor, a new data core and a dozen manufactory lines for planes, tanks and new iron tech. It was also here that I found the first clue about the Vulcan's death conspiracy. His stasis capsule had been produced here on Belekane, 9,000 years ago. Special consignment for the Inquisition, Ordo Malleus. Vulcan wasn't too happy when reading the Forge's manufacturing demand with the Inquisition sigil. The stasis field needs to contain and secure a large humanoid mutant, over 4 meters tall. It must also resist warp emanations of the highest grade. I'm gonna rip someone heads off. He grumbled in his gruff voice. I'm sure you will, Primarch. But meanwhile, start working on better stasis fields. Getting to the galactic core is quite dangerous. I answered with a lighter voice. The Primarch and his clones stared at me for a minute, then powered up their new Federation-grade STC cores and delved into the stolen stasis templates from Belekane. These guys were quite smart and even better than me at upgrading STCs. I liked them. Former Lamented Tech Marine Silitus Rock Lancefire stood on the platform at top of the spire, aptly named Viewpoint. Silitus knew he was chosen for reaching Forge Master rank and expert tech sourcist skills. A fabricator for a Forge world had to be competent, after all. Make me proud, son. And never give up hope. We're a third of the way to our goal, so there's a lot more blood to be shed. His father said before the Halo Crusade fleet departed from Idumea towards Belekane, and leaving him behind. Not completely alone, with several blank sisters and their children, plus the iron core of Lorica Thalak's suits and the core officers. A pair of data slates hang from his belt, one holding the STC templates he might need as the new fabricator colonel of Idumea, and the other slate a host of maps and lore regarding nearby sectors and adjacent non-imperial space. Most of that lore came from the Craigfane discoveries, of course. Two of his sisters, Ariel and Remy, were promised a warrant of trade as soon as a decent capital ship could be obtained for them, by whatever means necessary. His father didn't care too much for imperial laws, unless he benefited from them. They too had a pair of data slates with lower-grade STCs and mostly the same lore, plus an entourage of tech adepts, Sisters of Battle and Lamenta auxiliar troops. One of them might become a rogue trader in 100 years or less, if the lore was right about an abandoned battleship at Endrite. Perhaps organize an explorator expedition to that feral world, along with a regiment of the Iron Core and some colonists. There were still 100 void ships chartered to import sacrificial serfs for Idumea by the former fabricator, after all. Tests would reveal prospective new acolytes to aid his Forge world recover and grow, but the rest of the serfs should not be wasted. As for the other sister, the feudal world of Acreage was tormented by a pirate cruiser called Storm Walker and a rogue psyker under the name of Burning Princess. Pretty much a textbook acquisition for the Lancefire clan. Maybe even create a night world tied to his forge, if the local nobles were stable enough to withstand the implants and the pressure of a large machine spirit. Fabricator, the delegation from the Solex Admech sect has arrived at the Lance Ignis Cathedral, like you ordered. His fabricator Locus spoke a bit fearful from the elevator door. A decent tech priest native of Idumea, eager to wash away his sins for the near fall of his world. Perhaps a bit too eager? No matter, in time all the current tech priests will be replaced with new ones, either imported or mentally formatted right here with the proper indoctrination neural chairs. Praise the Omnissiah, brother adept. Let's meet with our brothers in faith and see what revelations they have to share about the holy nature of photons. He answered in a kind voice. Who said a fabricator couldn't trade STCs like a rogue trader? In this, Lord Captain Lancefire was right. Knowledge was to be shared and spread, if humanity wanted to return to the heights of the Golden Age. As for the cult of Solex itself, they would be very useful to the Iron Core with their expertise in laser and anti-Xenos warfare. His red robes fluttered a little in the bellowing winds of the spire, as Silitus turned to enter the elevator, revealing the Primaris battleplate underneath for a second. Silitus steeled his mind, and recited his favorite machine canticle to soothe the burdened elevator's machine spirit. Sadly, his own father never truly understood the machine cult, nor the meaning of a canticle. You were supposed to tell me about things like becoming a Grimna priest of an alien cult. His inquisitor mother admonished him in a harsh voice, tingling with a menacing psyker undertone. Regular humans would be paralyzed with fear, just from her voice. Menelao Lancefire shrugged off the psyker voice and just poked the Xenos cube at her hip. That Necron Nexus is much more dangerous, mother. Especially with the Catan running loose and nosing all over. And I don't mean our beloved Canis. He answered in a calm voice. Ordo Xenos, plus the operation manual. I have become rather competent using the first 6 runes. His mother declared proudly, tapping a few runes to produce a holographic map of their fleet, one Blackstone fortress in front and the other at the back, with escort carriers in the middle and battleships holding the flanks. You weren't unhappy when I extracted the database from the Craig Cogitator core, my dear mother. Menelaus tried in a peaceful manner. Deflect, appease and endure. What else could he do? Lady Valane frowned a little. Those Fanes aren't powerful, not like these Votan I learned about. You saw the size of that ancient core. I can barely imagine the mind inhabiting something like that. A machine spirit of that power, along with ancient tech to manipulate time and space, and mine out stars. Menelaus nodded, similarly worried. And this is why my father doesn't want to fight them directly. Most criminals are caught by tracing and investigating their finances, after all. The Votan are no different. His mother drew out her Emperor Tarot deck, then sighed and stored it back in her nexus. Sometimes I forget he is not nailed to the golden throne anymore. I don't want Magnus waving his feathers on my fate. Menelaus closed his eyes, and opened his soul to the Astronomicon. The difference was subtle, but for someone who knew the truth, it meant everything. Warp engine ships would work much the same, since trade and supplies had to move for the Imperium to exist. The new Macarius engines were far too expensive for bulk haulers and far too large for frigates or smaller void ships. Even the newest miniaturized engines could barely fit a cruiser, and while House Lancefire could afford to outfit all their capital ships with new engines, regular great houses might not even afford one. You could simply take a ship and go and ask him, in person. Mother Rose will help you bypass the waiting line. Menelaus proposed in a kinder voice. It was a bit strange to think about the Senatoress Imperial's representative as a stepmother, but yet she was. Adeptus Terra, Rosalia Lancefire. Probably rubbing elbows with the Emperor himself at the dinner table. And best not to think too much about his stepsister Janice Lancefire, rubbing more than elbows with the Emperor of mankind. He imagined himself patting the Emperor on the back. Brother-in-law, save a good spot in afterlife for me, when I die. Yeah, that would go great. His father might get away with something like that, not poor Menelaus. Lady Valane considered his words for a minute, while praying silently. It wouldn't go well, since Lord Lancefire has the Emperor's trust. And if a crusade was sent towards the Galactic Core, your father would be the one chosen to lead it anyways. Menelaus nodded. Primarchs could fail. Had failed in the past, and quite badly. Instead, his father had invented the Lancefire luck and all that followed. He knew the life story by heart anyways, since librarians were the keepers of knowledge. And as a Grimner priest, the scope of the knowledge simply expanded to AIs and STCs and all the wonders of the Federation. We worry too much, Mother. Lord Captain never loses. And when he does, it is only to gain even more from that loss. Remember the hand. Menelaus spoke while holding his left palm out. If you say talk to the hand, I will punch that smug smile off your face. His mother threatened half seriously. Menelaus hugged his mother. You'd break your wrist too. Durasteel sinews, he whispered in a lighter voice. Pef Lancefire would be the only regular human to get away alive from punching a space marine. It only added to his legend though, as did the talk to the hand moment. Go away, idiot. And copy the data from the Craig Fane for my Ordosh. Lady Valane growled as she turned around and walked off in a rush. Can she have the Craig data, Lord Captain? He asked on the datasphere circuit. Most of it, yes. Not the ships and treasures I'm keeping for your sisters, but the rest, no problem. Pef Lancefire answered in a careless tone. Stepping through the black stone wall of the fortress, a grey Fenrisian wolf turned to glance at the departing Inquisitor. Woof. The wolf asked in a wolfish tone, despite lacking the Rosarius collar of a real space wolf. I'm not in trouble, Zath. You might be though, when we reach the galactic core. The Votan must have mined many Necron tomb worlds, including the captured shards. I wonder if they think your kind is tasty. Menelaus answered with a shrug, then turned and walked away slowly. You were you? The Catan wondered in a hesitant voice.